All right, we are live. Since election night, doesn't everything just feel different now? I mean, not just our politics, but the whole mood of the country. Yes, some of our fellow Americans are in a very bad state. Clips of people filming their misery and sharing it with the world are everywhere. But for the majority of the country, it feels like a major societal and cultural shift has occurred. And there are a lot of people walking around now with a new spring in their step. And it sure looks like our media has also changed. They got a big wake up call on election day. Their corruption has been laid bare for all to see. Our pop culture feels like it's about to change as well, moving away from leftist moralizing and maybe getting back to producing entertainment with broad appeal. It just feels like the politicization of everything is over, and we're waking up in a new era in which leftism is no longer going to be the dominant force in American life. We will talk about all of this and more on episode 473 of the In the Tank podcast.
It's all right. It's all right. I feel that way too. It's all right. We feel that way together, okay? Let it out. Let it out.
Yes, let it out, everybody. Election day is over. We are at election day plus, I guess, 8 or 10 days at this point. And it is time. I had that. People who watched the podcast last week did see that little intro. We like to put a little something a little special at the end of our usual intro video, and we had that last week. We had it again this week, and actually, I promise that'll be the last time I will play that, because it is not time to scream. It is time to smile and to talk about how everything has changed. I am not your regular host, Donnie Kendall. In fact, Donnie isn't here. Chris Talgo is not here. Justin Haskins isn't here. They're all off doing something else today. And we almost canceled the show, but we wouldn't want to do that to our loyal listeners. So I decided independently that I was going to host the show myself and bring on two very special guests and friends. One of them is Linnea Lucan. You know her from the Climate Realism Show on Fridays. She's a research fellow for energy policy and environment policy here at the Heartland Institute. Welcome to In the Tank, Linnea.
Thank you very much. I'm always happy to be on In the Tank, especially on a week like this, following what is probably one of the most historic elections of my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, and the topic of this podcast, like I said, it just feels like it. Like I was talking to my wife the other day, and I said, doesn't even the air just feel different? I just feel like, it just feels like there's a big exhale that's been happening in the country. And also to talk to us about this kind of stuff and more is Chris Martz. He works with CFACT. He is a pretty famous guy on X/Twitter. And he is a meteorology student, a senior now. We'll be soon graduating with a degree in meteorology. And he enjoys trolling the climate alarmist left on Twitter and by pounding them in the face with facts. And that's great to see. So, Chris, welcome to the In the Tank podcast.
Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on with the two of you.
Is there anything else everyone should know about you? I don't want to disclose where you go to school. You should be in an undisclosed location for your own safety, but
Yeah, no, that's you summed it up pretty well there, I think. So there's not much else to it. Just senior meteorology student, and I troll the climate alarmists on Twitter. It's fun.
Yeah, and it's not, and you don't just deal with climate and climate issues and energy issues. You're out there engaging in the pop culture today, and in social media today, I should say.
Yeah,
so
I try not to, but sometimes it's like I get so aggravated by the stupid stuff I see. So
yeah,
you just gotta comment. I'm surrounded by it on a daily basis. So
No shortage.
no shortage. All right. Well, I have a list. If people can see the show notes, if they're on our email list, and if you are not on our email list, go to heartland.org/subscribe so you can get an email blast for this show and the Climate Realism show about 90 minutes before it goes on air to remind you and to give you the link. But I also just have to do a little bit of housekeeping that Donnie usually does because he's a very professional host of this show, and I'm just filling in temporarily. And that is a reminder to like, share, and subscribe. Like this video, leave comments underneath it. That helps the algorithm smile upon this program. And also share it with friends and subscribe and hit that bell because all those things are important because YouTube has demonetized the Heartland Institute's YouTube channel. And so we depend on you, the listening audience, to help us break through that algorithm. And also, we used to have when it was monetized, you'd be able to leave a super chat, throw a couple bucks in the can to help the show out. Well, you can't collect when you're demonetized. It means you can't collect money. So you can go to heartland.org/inthetank. That's heartland.org/inthetank, and you can support the show in that way and support the Heartland Institute. We are a nonprofit 501c3, so it's actually a tax-deductible donation. So with the end of the year coming, now's a good time to donate, and we really appreciate your help. All right. So going through, there's so many, as you can see on the sidebar over here, that we have many aspects of how everything feels different to go over. And what we're going to do first, I think, is, as I find the button here, we're going to talk about how the media has changed. I mean, you guys are on a podcast streaming on YouTube. A lot of people watching this don't just watch this program; they watch a lot of other programs. Joe Rogan got so big on YouTube that he went over to Spotify and they started, doing a video podcast for him there. He's the most listened to podcaster in the world, and I think he was just on Spotify for, I don't know, was it 6 months or so, and they wouldn't allow him to put it on YouTube anymore. And I guess he convinced them. It's like, no, you're actually throwing away audience by not letting me do it on YouTube as well. Let me go back on YouTube. And so now you see clips of him on YouTube or the entire show on YouTube. And Joe Rogan's interview with Donald Trump was seen across the two platforms. I would see easily more than 100 million times. That's just amazing. And so the legacy media is failing at the same time the new media is rising. Chris and Linnea, I'll start with you, Chris. Maybe you can share with the audience kind of what your media consumption habits might be, because this is one way that in which everything has changed, and it really only became crystal clear that people don't consume media the way they used to during and after this election.
Well, yeah, it's very interesting. I think this election really, Trump won the popular vote by several million votes, and he lost the popular vote twice. He won the Electoral College in 2016, and he lost both the popular vote and the Electoral College in 2020. And this time, he won both the Electoral College and the popular vote, and by a pretty decent margin. It's still a close election nonetheless. But I think what's different this time around is that people are starting to wake up to the idea that, legacy media, the traditional formats of cable news, the CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, they're not serving the public in their best interest by being reporters, reporting the facts. They have a hyper-partisan spin. So while something might be true, they have a very partisan take on the facts, and even Fox does that to an extent, obviously. But especially in the prime time, the evening shows, obviously that's when the biggest bias is going to be. But people are tuning that out. They realize they've realized that the media does nothing but they have an agenda. They're being paid to sell a partisan takes on things. They become these celebrity TV personalities involved in political discourse. And people want factual information. People want to hear directly from the candidates themselves, and they want to hear more than just what the the same in the case like the presidential debates or the vice presidential debates, people they ask the same questions over and over again. What are you going to do for healthcare? What are you going to do for the border? What are you going to do for the economy? What are you going to do about climate change? It's the same questions. So they don't get to explore other issues, and they don't get to talk at length about things. And this is why people, especially my age, they love long form podcasts like Joe Rogan. And another one I like is Theo Von, is that they go on and they talk directly to the candidates and the people, and they ask, what their takes on things are. And, I was listening to Theo Von, and they had Donald Trump on there one time, and it had like 13 million views. And then just a week before that, he had Senator Bernie Sanders. And while I don't agree with Bernie Sanders on a lot of things, it was interesting to hear his take, especially on big pharma, which I was largely in agreement with. It was interesting to hear Bernie talk about that because, he's been vilified also by the Democrat Party. They kind of forced him out of the primaries, obviously, in 2016 and 2020. And so it was interesting. It's interesting to hear what the candidates actually, or candidates, whether it's for the presidential election or a Senate race or whatever, hear their positions on things and hear it directly from them, and not somebody else's spin on it, not some fragmented clip that's taken out of context like CNN does with Trump all the time. So it was very interesting to see. And a lot of people my age listen to the Matt Walsh show, for example. Matt Walsh at Daily Wire is one of my favorite commentators. I like Jesse Kelly as well. It was interesting because I was featured on the Matt Walsh show twice recently. And one of my buddies, he's a meteorologist who he just graduated from where I go to school this past year, and he now works a full-time job. He was on his way home from work, and he was listening to the show, and he heard my name mentioned, and he immediately texted me and said, "Dude, you got to check this out. Matt Walsh mentioned you." So a lot of people my age listen to these podcasts. Nobody my age watches the news. I mean, I watch Greg Gutfeld every night, if I'm at home with my parents. I like that, but I don't watch the news. It's just kind of boring to me, and it's obviously very partisan. It's not factual. And so a lot of people, I'm sure Linnea can speak to this as well. People like scrolling, people like Twitter, people like, they like long form posts and short posts. And people like listening to podcasts. That's kind of their thing. They don't listen to TV, and or read newspapers, and it's dying out.
Yeah.
And I think that had a major influence on the election.
Definitely. And, Jim knows this about me. I'm the kind of person who will sit down and watch like a 3-hour podcast, or will listen to a 3-hour podcast while I'm doing other stuff, or, doing yard work, or cooking dinner or whatever. So yeah, definitely. I can't remember the last time I sat down in my own home and turned on a news channel. Never when I'm living on my own. Maybe like what Chris said, if I go over to visit my parents or something and they're watching Newsmax or OAN or something like that, I'll watch a little bit of that just like passively while hanging out with them. But yeah, no. Why would I watch a news channel that has commercials every 2 minutes that only give you like the briefest glimpse of any given, interview, when I can go and I can watch, as Chris mentioned, Joe Rogan sit down with Donald Trump or Vance. JD Vance's interview was fascinating. I mean, what a great look into like the kind of person that he is. And sit and watch them like just shoot the breeze for 3 hours. You get such a better idea of who this person is and what's important to them, rather than like a 30-second clip on a news station that is going to be, edited like crazy. Even if it's something like 60 Minutes or whatever, that it's not a live stream. They record this stuff in advance, and everyone knows that they're deceptive. And that goes for everybody. I don't think that the left holds the monopoly on deceptive editing in the news. So yeah, no, my generation does not watch the news. In short, legacy media is indeed cooked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm 54 years old, so I'm more than twice Chris's age. I'm probably twice your age, Linnea. That's all right. And we just had one of our regular viewers of the program is always in the chat, Christine Laurel. She says she's over 60 years old, and she doesn't watch the mainstream media anymore either. I mean, I can't remember. I mean, I unplugged my cable box, or stopped getting cable around this time, actually in 2020. I just about had enough, and I said, you know what, I don't need this. I won't. And it was amazing. You don't miss it. once you unplug from cable, I don't think people are not
Well,
going back. It's the idea
and
that you can get this audience back is just false, because
no.
once you pull yourself out, basically once you wake up and they unplug you from the matrix, you don't want to go back in.
If they didn't have the airports, I would love to see what their numbers looked like. The
Yeah,
the
CNN's
mainstream,
always on at the
yeah,
airport. Yeah.
CNN is the airport channel. I when you talk about like social media and stuff, yeah, it's pretty toxic in general. But think about the people that you know who are, especially on the left, who just sit there watching MSNBC all day. What's their worldview like? I mean,
Toxic.
it's totally warped. They, and people on these television channels are always going on and on about how the social media allows people to be misinformed. Well, I've never been more misinformed than when I watch mainstream news. I mean, I sit down and watch even just Fox News, and the stuff that they say is just nonsense half the time. I don't know where they're getting their their information from. Nowadays, though, it seems like some of them are getting their information from Twitter, or X, which is pretty funny. Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, we have viewers in the UK and stuff, and their TV license thing is a whole other story. So they've
Yeah,
got
the BBC, they have to pay a licensing fee, and most of them don't even watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have people here in the comments mentioning CNN. So let me get to a couple of stories in the show notes that are pretty interesting. So as I'm trying to host and produce at the same time.
while you look for that,
Yeah.
I can say, do you guys remember back in, I think it was 2016, but it might have been 2020. These years have been weird. We've been stuck in some kind of like weird time loop for the last couple of years. So who knows? Was it on MSNBC, maybe Morning Joe? I could be wrong. When one of the female anchors said, like, we don't want people fact checking things on their own or looking up information on their own. That's our job to tell them what to think.
That's
Do you
right.
guys
Yeah, that was
remember
Mika
when
I
that-
saw
Brzezinski.
that. Yep, it was her. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it couldn't, the destruction of an industry couldn't happen to a more deserving industry than the mainstream media. And look, I was a reporter. I was, I was a journalist. I was a reporter for newspapers. For the younger people, a newspaper is something that's usually put into a plastic bag and thrown onto your driveway, or at least was way back in the day. They're pretty much extinct now.
Is it that thing that they give me in my town
I
that
can
I
call you
use
Paper
to
Boy.
start my fire in my fireplace?
That's
that what
that's
that
right.
is?
Yeah, help start fires, line bird cages, wrap fish in, all that good stuff. But yeah, so I was a journalist for most of my adult life. That was what I trained to be in college. It was the only thing I was good at, actually. So it doesn't pay a lot, but it's very interesting, a lot of fun. And I haven't gotten a newspaper since 2006. I think I stopped getting the Los Angeles Times when I lived out in Southern California. Haven't had any interest in a newspaper since, and I was in the business. And we have one of our commenters here saying he used to be a TV newsman and he doesn't watch the TV news anymore. And it's because media has gotten out of the business for a long time of informing the public. Their job now, whether it's print, online, or broadcast, or radio, or anything, their job now is to be a propagandist for leftist ideology, and specifically the Democrat Party. And the American people have woken up to that fact, and they are leaving in droves, and they are choosing their own and seeking out their own media, including podcasts like this, like Chris said, like Theo Vaughn, like Joe Rogan. They'll watch the Daily Wire's production of the Matt Walsh Show, or Michael Knowles. They'll watch Glenn Beck. I mean, there's infinite number of options, and if they're only successful because they're giving people an alternative to basically the propaganda they're getting everywhere else. Megyn Kelly, actually, I've been finding myself watching her show a lot more
Same.
recently, and it's just I saw somebody on X call her like a washed up, failed TV news host. It's like, see, again, you
She's
guys
very
don't
articulate.
get it. She is her own show now, and she's making, I don't know if she's making what she made as a $20 million a year host for NBC and Fox News, but it is the people that are stuck in the legacy media, that are still in the matrix, they can't even really understand what's happening. And I want to bring up an example of CNN here, and we'll talk about this. CNN is a garbage network. Oops, I get the wrong button. There you go. CNN is a garbage network, and now we will have some Schadenfreudic fun on their demise. It says here from the Daily Mail, CNN is planning to wield the axe on some of its high-paid staff after dismal election ratings that cap off a disastrous period for the cable network. According to an exclusive new report from Puck, network executives will unleash sweeping layoffs in a bid to save the network's flailing reputation. This comes after the departure of stalwart Chris Wallace, and amid reports senior stars like Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper have both been denied raises. Oh my goodness, can you believe it? At the time, CNN had averaged 13.3 million viewers in prime time.
Today, thoughts and prayers go out to them.
Oh, I know, right? Today, it's only around 800,000 viewers in prime time. However, following the Trump presidency and a term from the Biden administration, it lost on election night to MSNBC in terms of ratings, nothing that had ever been seen before, as it drew in only 5.1 million television sets with eyes on them on election night. And MSNBC had 6 million, and Fox News had 10.3 million. But those numbers actually, guys, are way below what they were in 2020, not to mention how they were in the 90s and the early 2000s, when it would be, the whole country would be watching their televisions for election returns, and they don't do that anymore. They scan X, they watch podcasts. I should have watched Megyn Kelly's coverage of the election night because I just forgot, and instead I watched The Blaze, which was also awesome. But CNN has high-paid stars like Anderson Cooper, who makes $20 million a year on CNN for a show that nobody watches. So, and then we heard news this week that MSNBC is apparently on the chopping block, or they want to sell it. And I heard a rumor that Elon Musk might buy it.
That would be hilarious if he actually did.
Yeah. So is watching these legacy media outlets, spiral into the drain. I think is fun, and as we say here in the little sidebar there, the legacy media is cooked. They don't know it yet. They should know it now. I mean, it's been 10 days since the election. They've seen the ratings. Fewer people are watching any of these shows. In fact, MSNBC, I am convinced, only won one election night for the cable news networks. Or beat CNN because millions of conservatives switched over to MSNBC to watch the liberal tears flow and to watch them lose their minds with Donald Trump winning.
I saw that MSNBC lost like half their primetime audience after election night.
Yeah, it's gone. They watch
like
an election
54%.
Yeah,
of their viewership gone.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
We tuned in actually, and I was so sad because Rachel Maddow, my bad, she was not melting down like I was hoping. I was hoping to see tears, and they were being really calm and collected. And I gotta say, I was disappointed because we tuned in for entertainment, and I did not get that.
Oh, it was pretty entertaining. I was entertained by it. I'm going to bring up on screen here. That story about, this is from Outkick, again, an alternative media outlet that is succeeding.
Clay Travis.
Clay Travis, an alternative media outlet that is succeeding while the legacy media fails. And MSNBC's and CNN's ratings tank after Trump steamrolls Kamala Harris. Mediaite obtained viewership from Thursday to highlight the concerns both channels face. For the day, MSNBC averaged 596,000 viewers, while CNN recorded just 419,000 viewers, a decline of 23% for MSNBC and 40% for CNN over the year. And then year over year, MSNBC's ratings are down 54% and CNN's are down 30%. Guys, that 596,000 viewers. I know that we're going to talk a little bit about how maybe woke Hollywood, the era of woke Hollywood, is also over. But 596,000 viewers. I mean,
I can get that on a tweet.
You can get that on a tweet, right? Joe Rogan was getting 1 million viewers like every 30 minutes when he posted that interview with Donald Trump. A channel I really enjoy, The Critical Drinker. He'll drop an 8-minute video reviewing a movie or talking about pop culture, and it'll grab 1 million views within 2 hours. A million. So it'll double all that stuff. So
Why do you think groups like, CNN and MSNBC and whatnot work with Media Matters to shut down conservative channels on YouTube and stuff? I mean, and they work to shut down some leftist channels too if they're getting too popular. They're trying to, like, in the background, crush alternative media. It's never going to work. It's way too late for that. But it is funny to watch. And like you said, these organizations are dropping off. Couldn't happen to better people. Couldn't happen to more talented hosts.
yeah.
I should get them a get well soon card from Hallmark.
Well, I mean, you look at
sign it like this.
Yeah. Well, Chris
Kiss
Wallace.
emoji.
Chris Wallace said that he wants to, now that he was fired. Come on, they offered him probably 1/5 of his previous salary when he came in, I think making like 6 million or 7 million a year, maybe 10 million a year. They're like, you got no ratings, you have no audience. We'll give you 3 million if you want to have a new contract. So they pushed him out. He says he wants to get into maybe some podcasting on his own. I think that's actually going to be one of the funnier things is having, wide-eyed is having this happen. The idea that Chris Wallace can actually attract an audience on his own.
He talks like
crazy. Yeah.
That will be the interesting thing to see when a lot of these hosts try to make their own way. And because what I was observing as I was looking at the pictures of those guys on that CNN article, the quality of intelligence and in presentation from these like random podcasters is so much better than primetime television anchors right now. It's unbelievable how much these frankly talentless hacks get paid when they have no viewership also.
Well, that's going to end. I mean, it's not sustainable. Eventually, as Margaret Thatcher famously said in the 80s, the problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money. And the problem with woke leftist media is that eventually you run out of viewers and you run out of advertising money, and you can't pay these people anymore. These salaries. And that's what's actually I think is really going to be fascinating is, all right, we'll see how talented these people really are. See if they can build an audience on their own. You know who can do that? Well, Gutfeld probably could for sure, although he's going to stick at Fox. But Megyn Kelly has proven she can do that. Joe Rogan created an audience out of nothing. Theo Vaughn created an audience out of nothing, and because of the talent and they're interesting. But that's what I find so fascinating about
Dan Bongino.
Yeah, Dan Bongino can build his own audience. Dave Rubin can build his own audience. Obviously, Matt Walsh and guys at Daily Wire can build their own audience. In fact, they build their own network and build an audience for that, as well as each individual star. And so we're going to find out what these guys and gals are made of. We're going to find that they're not made of anything. They're made of propaganda, and nobody's going to want to voluntarily consume that.
I think Joy Reid's gonna get the was it the pink slip soon from MSNBC? She's coming unhinged on her TikTok.
Yeah, she is coming unhinged. So before we get into out of the media criticism here and get into maybe some Hollywood and talk in other ways that everything feels different now, it's a story from Semaphore, which again is another kind of new startup alternative media site that's supposed to try to be supposed to be centrist. But this is a story about, I'll just leave it on the top because I have it in my notes here. Basically how old media is grappling with its new limits. In part of the story here, it says, to some media executives, it's a sign that the quality of news offered to Americans is not satisfying them. A view that Axios founder Jim Vandehei described as, quote, gut check time for traditional media. Quote, the verdict is not debatable. Half the country thinks traditional media is biased and often useless. They feel reporters treat Republicans like a crime beat and Democrats like friends in need. I don't think this is usually the case, but it happens enough to give critics pause. And so even the people inside the media bubble are seeing that they see the writing on the wall. I mean, I knew Jim Vandehei back when I covered George W. Bush's re-election campaign in 2004, in the first year of his second term in 2005. I'd be on the press planes with people. And so I knew Jim Vandehei and his friend Mike Allen. They left to create something called Politico. And Politico was something absolutely brand new. I know you guys were so tiny, you might have even been alive for all I know. But back in 2005, it was considered, if you had an online publication, if you were just online, that was considered, cheap, and just not reputable, and you can't succeed. If you were just a .com, you stunk. But Politico was really, I think, the first real journalism project that covered politics that was online only, and it succeeded. So Jim Vandehei was a kind of a revolutionary in that regard long ago. I mean, gosh, that's 20 years ago now. And here he is today, showing that for all that work and all that time, people don't trust the media anymore, and people are leaving, and it's falling apart. And it seems that very few people that are in the business recognize that it's happening, and importantly, why it's happening.
It's actually interesting because I wanted to point out that we were talking about earlier that you're talking about people that, and like one of the guys in the YouTube comments who used to be on TV who left. I know a lot of meteorologists who have worked as broadcast, weather presenters or meteorologists on air on TV who have left the news industry in the last couple of years and have pursued jobs in the private sector or with, the government. One guy that I know quit TV in Houston, and he's now working for the state government in Texas as a meteorologist. And a lot of them just cannot take. And I know some who are still on air that have realized how partisan the news has become and how irrelevant it has become, and they're looking for their way out while they can, so they don't get stuck in these contracts, and that they can look for better, more prosperous paying careers.
Yeah. Lene, anything to go to maybe wrap a bow on this media is dying, is cooked kind of deal?
I think we pretty well stomped them for a good bit here. I think we can move on.
We will move on. And so again, the theme today is that it just seems that everything just feels different. There was a lot of relief. My friends would ask me, "Gosh, you must be so happy that Trump won," and I was like, I'm not feeling happy yet. I just feel relieved. I just feel like we avoided something very, very terrible. And the idea that Donald Trump got he's going to win the popular vote by perhaps a bit of a narrow margin, but a narrow margin being a few million people out of a country of 330, and 100 probably is going to be 150 million votes. So but that still matters. A Republican, let's just say it this way, a non-Democrat has not won the majority of votes for president since 2004. And before that, the last time it happened was 1988. So it's only been twice in the last 30 years or so that Republicans have won the majority. And so this is a resounding rejection. I believe, and this is why I want to get into kind of a cultural examination, because I'm convinced that on two Tuesdays ago, the American people just said, enough. I am tired of it. I'm tired of the leftist agenda being in everything in my life. It's everywhere. There's a stink. It hangs on the drapes. It's in our sports. You have to look at the back of a football helmet that says, leftist messages on it, supposedly to stop racism. I'm just projecting, I suppose, but I was fed up with having every single bit of our life infused with leftist politics, from Hollywood to public schools to newspapers to billboards to sports. The idea that if you are not celebrating the latest leftist, cause du jour, that you are an enemy. You need to be an ally of every single thing a leftist wants the world to look like. And I think you guys can tell me if I'm overreading this, but to me, I thought in all of those aspects of life, and including in Hollywood, America just said, enough. I don't want it anymore. I'm rejecting all of it. I want you out of everything. And that's why I feel like everything feels different. Am I wrong?
No.
You said go ahead,
Trump is the burn it all down candidate, in my opinion. At least that's what he is to me. So yeah, no, definitely. Everyone is pretty well fed up. And not to mention, I mean, Kamala is just not appealing for different reasons than Hillary Clinton was not appealing. But yeah, but just maybe Democrats could get a candidate that people like. That would be interesting to see. You know, people kind of
Wait,
like.
are you saying that Cardi B and Beyonce it didn't sway your opinion?
No, somehow. I don't know how.
Not Stephen King either. Stephen King, he's a mastermind.
Oh, well, and he's very stable, very sane, and also definitely isn't haunted by his past of getting hit by a van. But he's no, that's then every new celebrity endorsement, especially when they were known paid endorsements. It's just, yeah, that's utterly unconvincing, and in fact, it actually makes me like a candidate even less when they're doing that stuff.
Another thing I wanted to touch on, I wanted to add is that, and I just thought of it, is that, like Trump or not, he came across as very relatable to people. He did the McDonald's publicity stunt, and he did a lot of, different things here and there. He went to football. He went to different podcasts. And actually, if you watch the Theo Von podcast, the one that he did a few weeks ago for the election, that podcast was very wholesome. It was a whole different side of him. It was kind of sort of like that speech he gave at the RNC after he got shot. He was reflecting on that. It was very personal. He was talking about his father and his brother, and that entire podcast. It was just more personal about him and his life, and it was an interesting side to see. He came across as more relatable. Meanwhile, you have Vice President Harris, who campaigned, and she had all these celebrity endorsements from Cardi B, and you had John Bon Jovi up there. I guess he gave Harris a bad name instead of a bad name, but he was up there just. It had all these celebrities endorsements, and the Democrat Party has become the party of MSNBC and the party of Hollywood. And I see all these people on Twitter are calling everybody stupid. Like 75 million Americans, you're stupid, they're uneducated. But last time I checked, these 75 million people know the difference between a man and a woman. So I wouldn't really go down that route for those people if I were them, because it kind of looks embarrassing to go in a corner and pout with their tail tucked between her legs. But Harris, she posted a picture with her and I think her step nieces or some family, some young kids in her family. And she came across in that picture, despite the glass of wine or champagne or whatever she was drinking, it was very relatable. And I think had she done that more during the campaign, instead of, I got Mark Hamill to endorse me, or I got Tom Hanks to endorse me, like, who cares? Relate to the American people, because they don't have these celebrity connections. And the whole party has become completely out of touch with everyday Americans. So keep calling them stupid, keep calling them uneducated. But again, at least they know basic biology. And, they are the working class people of this country. They are your farmers. They are our policemen. They are our firefighters. They are our steel workers, our mill workers. They are our landscapers. They keep our mechanics. They turn wrenches. They keep this country going. These people that are these white credentialed people that think that they're so smart. If stuff suddenly hit the fan and we were back in the Stone Age, their jobs would become completely irrelevant because they don't know how to tie their shoe. And they have I'm in academia, so I'm surrounded by people that are brilliant, smart people when it comes to academics and STEM. But when it comes to common sense and real world applications and real world skills, they're sorely lacking. Yeah. So keep calling people uneducated and you're going to be well on to losing in 2028. That's my message to the left.
But Chris, she came from a middle-class family. Therefore, everything she does is, in that context, unburdened.
Middle-class family. Yep. Well, I wanted to hit a rim shot for your Bon Jovi joke, Chris, but I couldn't find it within 2 minutes of you making the joke. It took forever, so. But very good. Yeah, I actually I want to share one more thing that I came across this week while thinking about what's going on here in the world, and that is this tweet from John Byrne Murdoch, and he says, just to clarify, this isn't just the first time. Actually, it's a chart here. that shows from Financial Times. Every governing party facing election in a developed country this year lost vote share. The first time that's ever happened, ever. And since I started tracking this in the beginning of the 20th century, and you can see on this chart right here, that this is this is real. That every election in the developing world is kicking out the ruling class, their so-called ruling class, and rejecting them, and that's where I think everything feels different, because it's not just in the United States; it's everywhere. We have one of our commenters right here on this chat say that MAGA's coming to Europe. The Heartland Institute, we had Nigel Farage as our guest at our benefit dinner in September, and then we got to spend a good bit of the morning and afternoon with him the next day on Saturday. And we did an interview with him in a cigar lounge, which actually you can find at go to heartland.org. You'll see the video right there on our front page. But so I had the honor of driving Nigel Farage around. And if you don't know who Nigel Farage is, he's basically the, some people call him the Donald Trump of Great Britain, but he is a longtime principled conservative who stands up for real conservatism in the UK instead of what's increasingly, kind of rhino-ish, squishy conservatism among the Tories. And so
I like squishy. Just kidding.
yeah. And so anyway, when I was driving around, I asked him, I said, when Brexit happened, it came from out of nowhere like a lightning bolt. People thought, all the polls showed that it was going to fail, that the UK would not vote to get out of the EU. All the polls were wrong. The British people said Brexit, yes. And then after that, it was in 2016, a few months after that, Donald Trump was elected president. A few weeks before our president, or a couple months before our election here in the United States, again, the United Kingdom had an election, and Nigel Farage's conservative upstart party went gangbusters, did great, had a fantastic election day. And I asked him, I said, do you think the same thing's going to happen in the United States? And he says, I do. And I really hope it does, because if it doesn't, we're all in big trouble. So I think there is really a sense, again, that everything feels different, not just in the United States, but overseas, because the ruling class is in trouble. And the American people, instead of taking up arms and setting things on fire, having an endless summer of love in our streets in the United States, where we light fires to celebrate our love. They go to the ballot box, and they're doing it the old-fashioned way and the peaceful way, and I think it's fantastic.
Sorry, my dog's kind of barking, so I'm trying not to talk to her. I think she stopped. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's not just the UK. We've got friends that are trying to, or that are gaining popularity for a kind of like populist, or at least center-right conservative kind of movements in Poland and Austria and Hungary and all sorts of places. I think even, I could be totally off base on this, but I think that I heard that there's even a little bit of a movement happening in places like the Netherlands and Sweden and Norway, getting rid of some of their more extreme leftists in government. I could be off on that. Yeah, South America is a big one. So it's going very interesting for everybody. We'll see. We'll see how it is.
One thing I also wanted to go ahead, and I'll let you finish.
No, you go ahead. I didn't really have all that much.
So one thing I want to point out is that, and it's, as I think as we transition into the last part, is that the filling last. I think that it's important to note that it's not just the presidency that matters. And people in this election, they really turned up for Trump. And I think that the Scott Pressler guy did a really good job in registering people and helping flip Pennsylvania red. And I think he's going over to New Jersey to probably do the same thing for the midterm. So we'll see how that works out. And maybe Virginia for 2028. So we'll see, my home state. But one thing I want to point out is that it's not just the presidency that matters. We need to have this sort of voter enthusiasm, and conservatives need to, in the Senate and the House races, and also their local government, your sheriff, your district attorneys, your local judges, your state representatives, your state legislatures in general, your city council, town council, county board of supervisors. All of those things matter, and probably more so than the presidency, even the chief executive. People are complaining about the House or not the House, the Senate Majority Leader, and the voters themselves are sort of to blame for this. The GOP primary voter will vote for just whoever they see on maybe Fox News, or they'll vote for name familiarity rather than voting for doing the research to figure out who the best candidate probably is.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, your audio keeps coming in and out. I was wondering if it was me, if it was somebody else. I don't know. You kept fiddling with it. I think you're doing wireless, and I think the connection is breaking there. So we'll have to see.
Okay. I don't know. It's like
our audience. Yeah, it's not coming in. It's not coming in very strong. So we'll see if we can figure out how to fix that as we go along. All right. Maybe you can come back. Maybe you can. No, you want to do that. Leave and come back. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Thanks, audience, for noticing. Sometimes sometimes I think it's me. Maybe my computer is wrong, but it wasn't. It was Chris. So something going on there. It's breaking up. So anyway, we'll get that fixed. Not a problem. Let's see. Yeah. So I want to get into a little bit of the Hollywood stuff, and I think because I know. Let's test you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We could a little bit say something longer than can you hear me?
Is it better now that I'm?
No, it's the same. It's actually bad.
Oh, come on. Let me come back. Yeah,
it's crackling.
Yeah, leave and come back.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody.
Sorry about that, folks. That's fine. We'll get him back here in a minute. So that gives me a chance to bring up this story. Linnea and I, as colleagues and friends, we talk a lot about kind of the things we like to watch, the pop culture that we consume. And and we've noticed we actually watch some of the same pop culture channels like Nerdrotic, Gary Beekler's channel. Friday Night Tights is a fantastic live stream that I try to catch. I definitely catch it over the weekend, not live if I don't catch it live on a Friday afternoon. The Critical Drinker is another one. Geeks and Gamers. There's lots of these so-called YouTube stars who have become YouTube stars because they have been pushing back against the wokeness of Hollywood. And it seems, so we can get Chris back in here, it seems that people in Hollywood themselves are now realizing that they have gone too far with the woke stuff. And it's time to start maybe entertaining audiences again, make that your primary job and not indoctrinating them. So there's a story here called Hollywood Braces for a Woke Backlash in the Wake of Trump's Election. I actually pulled an excerpt here that I'll read, and then maybe we'll see if Chris's audio is good. It says, Hollywood, overwhelmingly liberal, is weighing the potential backlash to its business of a second Donald Trump presidency and a right-leaning electorate. A right-leaning electorate, by the way, that was always there, but it just expressed itself more strongly on Tuesday than ever before. Getting back to it. After many years of embracing left-wing values, diversity and inclusion in Marvel and Star Wars storylines, empowering women in superhero movies and animated kids' fare, Hollywood may find itself tipping rightward as the winds of change blow through the country. It's a shift away from wokeness that was already underway. I don't think so. I don't think there was a shift away from wokeness already underway, but whatever. The story goes that some in the industry are clearly concerned. Quote, we know that Hollywood loves to follow, not lead. Evan Shapiro, a film and television producer, told The Wrap. It's very likely you'll see more of Jake Paul, more of Joe Rogan, more of Zachary Levi, and more of Roseanne Barr. More of the right-leaning, conservative-leaning creator economy will get more airtime because clearly that S works. And then finally here on Friday, a producer and former talent manager, Cassian Elways, noted on X that the experience of putting together a new movie, quote, has been painful because of the current environment in Hollywood where fear is rampant. But I'm a filmmaker. I need to lead by example. The audience is out there. We just need to figure out a way to reach them. I'm hoping there are distribution innovators dreaming of new paths. The theme of this story, guys, seems to be that there's suddenly a new audience out there. They've suddenly all turned to the right. And now we need to relate to them. And the whole idea that, a liberal has to worry about his job in Hollywood seems a little crazy to me.
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, we touched on it a little bit with the, all these celebrities coming out to endorse Kamala Harris. And they have to know that, at least half of the country, I mean, maybe they really don't because they're in their little bubbles. But they have to know that about half the country disagrees with them and is going to be left with kind of a bad taste in their mouth after all this stuff. But it just occurred to me too, she had the entire cast of the Avengers, I guess, come and
Yes.
do like a video for her. Normally that's not a good sign when the entire cast of the Avengers shows up to help you out and to congratulate you for being a good person or whatever. Um, that's like Make-A-Wish level stuff, and we did see that happen to her campaign after election day last week. But no, I think you mentioned Critical Drinker earlier, but and the other day I think he posted a video talking about how um, where he mentioned that like stardom isn't what it used to be, and how people just don't have this like celebrity worship that they used to have. I mean, maybe with like Taylor Swift or something, but even that obviously didn't have an impact on this election. And if it did, it wasn't enough to push them over the edge. I think because all of these celebrities are on like social media and we hear from them and their political opinions and stuff way more than anyone at any time ever. You had like Jane Fonda or whatever back in the 60s, 70s, 80s doing political stuff then, but that was kind of like outside of the norm, I think. But now it's like they all have an opinion, and it turns out that they all have vacuous, stupid opinions. So it's not endearing to them. And so between that and between the fact that like most of what Hollywood puts out is utter trash, and probably is only going to get worse with AI moving in, it's looking bad for them. And once again, couldn't happen to better people.
Oh, you're muted, Chris, but you're.
I know. I was just agreeing.
You're messing with me.
That's what I do to people. If you actually know me in person, I live to mess with people. I'm like a big prankster. But anyway, I'll refocus.
No, it just seems to me that Hollywood is going to have to react. I mean, finally snapped out of their out of their mind controlled stupor. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but Hollywood is what?
A trance.
A trance, yeah. And Hollywood seemed to think that if we just we'll race and gender swap every character, we'll redo everything, and we'll just make the hero instead of a man, we'll make it a woman and we'll make sure that a person of color is now the hero instead of the sidekick, and they did it, and they do it over and over and over again, and they inject woke leftist agenda into all of the products. And I think they really believed for a long time, and they're snapping out of it, but they believe that it doesn't, we have the power to control the minds of of the world, actually. And if we can put the messaging into the entertainment, they will be re-educated, and we will make the world a better place because we will change the way people think. And what they actually found out is that people don't want that. The audience doesn't want that. They want to be entertained. They don't want to be talked down to. And maybe Hollywood is starting to realize now that that's the actual business they're involved in, because just like the media, eventually you start running out of other people's money. In this regard, investors who are losing billions with these studios. I mean, what do you think, Chris? I mean, am I watching too much Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic that I have now been brainwashed to think that that they're trying to brainwash me in Hollywood, or do you see it too?
No, I see it too. I most of the movies I watch are like more than like 30 years old. I mean, I watched Smokey and the Bandit with Burt Reynolds and all of them, and I watch all the classic movies, some of those old was it Phil Murphy? Beverly Hill Cop, some movies like that. I watch all them old classic movies and stuff because they're more entertaining, they're more fun. They're not always, politically correct, and they didn't have like a lecturing, underlying political message that they're trying to get you to sway your vote some way, like a lot of these new movies are. I barely go to the movie theater anymore to watch movies. I mean, there's good movies that are made. I mean, the Elvis movie that came out recently, I think 2022 or 23 was really, really well done. Top Gun Maverick was really well done. But most of the other movies that seem to be coming out are just, they have this a political message to them that's just condescending to everyday Americans and lecturing us with some cultural message. And you can see it in TV shows. You see it with my grandma, for example. She's obsessed with Law and Order Special Victims Unit, and there's a lot of underlying messaging in that show that didn't used to be there when the show first came on in 1999. And it makes that show kind of unwatchable because there's always some kind of left-wing undertone to it. And so it's starting to, I think, change a little bit. I mean, especially with movies like Top Gun being made. But the last 10 years or so, I mean, it's just been, or it's probably more than that. It's been just shoved down our throats constantly. And people are tuning it out. They're losing money at the box office. People don't want to listen to it. And people are tuning out of those cable TV shows, and they're going over to Netflix, or they're going over to Daily Wire, which has a whole bunch of interesting movies and TV shows that they've made that are just movies that are not even conservative messaging. It's just movies and entertainment, which is what the Hollywood industry should be. I think that Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes.
Gervais,
I think he had people. I think more celebrities should listen to him and that messaging, and that come up, accept your award, and sit down. You're not qualified to give the public a lecture when most of you didn't spend any more time in school than Greta Thunberg. So.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of my take on it. I agree with you. I think it's starting to change. The culture is starting to change. Americans are fed up, but it's gonna I think linger. I think we're gonna see the downfall of the media before we see the downfall of like Hollywood entertainment, and I think it's gonna be a slower transition there because there's more money involved in that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. I would rather watch Animal House like 100 times than watch any of the top movies that have come out in the last couple of years, pretty much, except for maybe the ones that you mentioned. I have a bit more of a cynical opinion on this. I think it's not going to stop until it's absolutely forced to stop. I think that, like with the comic books industry, which I was into comics when I was in like high school and stuff. They're still doing it. They sell, a tenth of what they used to sell in comic books because of the social justice messaging that they've jammed into everything, and they're still doing it. They have not reversed course. They've doubled down, and it's killing them, and they don't care. Probably because they are making money elsewhere, as in they are getting covered by like BlackRock or some other kind of funding source that doesn't have to be necessarily directly tied to sales. I think the same thing is going to keep happening with Hollywood. I think that there will be some movies that come out that are better and they'll do really, really well. But most of it is going to continue to be utter slop until they are forced to change. And I'm not sure that they're going to. I think they're just going to run themselves into the ground, and I think there will be alternatives that will come up to Hollywood.
That's a fair assessment. I can actually agree with that sentiment and see where I might be wrong in my reasoning. I also wanted to point out, as an aside, it was Eddie Murphy, not Phil Murphy's the governor of New Jersey. It was Eddie Murphy. And it was a Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop. So that was embarrassing, but we're going to continue on.
Phil Murphy is a joke.
The same person.
It's a joke.
Yeah, Phil Murphy is a joke, but he's not a comedian. So all right. All right. Yeah. And I just wanted to make, and I think you're right. I mean, again, the theme of this is that everything feels different. And then obviously it's too early to know and to feel anything different from Hollywood, but seeing a story like that, where this election has been a wake up call to the world, really, I think, in many ways. And that for Hollywood to actually run a story like this, where producers are saying, gosh, half the country doesn't like our messaging. Maybe we should consider entertaining them. And making them happy customers and consumers of our product. And it's not, and again, it's not the idea that, leftists haven't tried to infuse messaging in their entertainment. It was just done a lot more subtly, and it was actually entertaining when it happened. Norman Lear, the great legendary television producer, I think died just a few months ago at the age of 100. I think it was, or close to 100. Anyway, of course, he was responsible for the show All in the Family. You guys are too young for this, Linnea and Chris, to watch that live. You may have seen a rerun or two, but I know a lot in our audience are very familiar with All in the Family. the butt of every joke was Archie Bunker, who was a bigot. And what was I think the Carol O'Connor who played him and Norman Lear started to get a little worried and resentful that he was the most popular character in the show and that the audience loved him and he was a bigot. And it was because, and that horrified them. And then another show I remember was Family Ties. You guys might remember that. I know a lot of people in the audience probably do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was Michael J. Fox's big star turn as a TV star.
Yep.
And he became a movie star. But the premise of the show, the source of the comedy and the conflict and the fun actually on that show was the fact that his parents were two 60s hippie liberals who were trying to impose leftist hippie values into their children. But Michael J. Fox rejected it all. He was a Reagan Republican. He was in the Republican Club at high school. He was a big time conservative. And so there was a message there. There was a message that they were trying to get through. They actually wanted to promote the liberal message and make Michael J. Fox look like a buffoon. But Michael J. Fox played that role so well, and he made such good points that the opposite had happened. So, Hollywood can get a message across as long as it's entertaining, it's handled fairly, and frankly just respects the other side. And I think what we're hopefully going to see, and where everything may feel different, is that our media and our culture, and hopefully now our schools, will start treating a lot of people that don't agree with them with a lot more respect.
Yeah, well, and I'm, when you watch especially old comedy, you tend to just be struck by how much more intelligent it is than comedy
George
that tends to
Carlin.
come out now. Sorry?
George Carlin comes to mind.
Oh yeah. Not so. I've never been much of a fan, but I'm thinking more along the lines of like Caddyshack. There's it's just more intelligently written comedy than now. And I think part of the reason why that's the case is because when you're trying really, really hard to give a message that does not get misconstrued or misinterpreted in any way. Like the left right now cannot bear the thought of someone coming away with the wrong message from something that they are putting effort into. So instead of like trying to subtly weave it into the story in an intelligent way, they club you over the head with it about a dozen times per scene, in order to make sure that you understand exactly what's going on and exactly what they want you to believe about this character or about whatever. This is some of the reason why you have the dialogue now in these movies where characters are telling other characters what their personality traits are. And you're like, yeah, this is a visual medium. You can show us this stuff. You don't have to talk us through it this way. It's very, very, very painful to watch. I think they're hiring like the lowest in very low intelligence and very low experience people, like right out of CalArts or something, to write a lot of this stuff. And they're all just like deeply, deeply inculcated in the super far left messaging.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's our Tom Cruise. As we're talking Hollywood, there's our Tom Cruise GIF that's going to help you to smash that like button and to like and subscribe to this podcast. There you go. Put your thumbs around Tom. If anyone knows where I got that clip, if anyone recognizes that clip, and you put it in the chat, I'll send you a free Heartland T-shirt. All right. I don't think anyone will get it, but we'll see. So actually, I wanted to wrap up here. I think, everything feels different. The legacy media is cooked. Woke Hollywood era might be over. And I think I want to wrap it up by asking both you guys whether you think that this feeling will last. And by that, I mean that do you think this is a real and perhaps nothing's permanent in life, but as permanent as it gets, culture and political shift in this country? That my thesis that Americans just said on every level, enough, we're going back. Kamala's, one of Kamala's slogans says, "We're not going back." America said, "Yes, we are." We're going back to normalcy. So do you think this is going to last politically and culturally in America? Linnea, you start.
Sure. It's going to depend on a lot of things. I don't think that there is such thing as like really going back, because once we've seen what the left is willing to do, how they're willing to um, weaponize every single department of the government in order to go after political enemies, in order to go after, keep in mind, Donald Trump has become more conservative since he got into office the first time, but he has always been like a classical New York Democrat, basically. And they went after him and turned him into like mega Hitler, right? In their eyes, which is insane. He's like a very central, it's like centrist kind of individual, compared to, more rock solid conservatives that we have in government. So the fact that they're willing to do that, I think, now that everyone has seen it, it's going to be much, much harder for them to regain the level of social control that they had. And if the Department of, what is it, government efficiency, if Doge is successful in its mandate over the next 2 years to absolutely obliterate half of the federal bureaucracy, I think that we will see lasting change. Um, the media is like our sidebar says, cooked. They're not going to learn, I don't think. Over the last week and a half, I have seen them double down on the exact reasons that they lost in the first place. I don't think they are going to come around. So we're going to continue to fight those guys until they are just gone. Um, I think it can last, but it's going to take us maintaining the momentum that we have now, and not fumbling it.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you're of the age that I was a little younger than you when basically the Reagan Revolution happened. In 1980. Actually, I was 10 years old, but I remember the first election I really remember, obviously, was when I was 14, and the 1984 election, and Ronald Reagan sweeping the country, losing only Minnesota and Washington D.C. to Walter Mondale, who in many ways was very much like a Kamala Harris. In that he was very much out of step with the mood of the country, and his party got destroyed, and it would be out in the wilderness for quite a while. I get the same kind of feeling that that's what this election was about, and that's what the American people have done. Chris, you're younger than both me and Linnea. It's going to be your generation that is coming into their political power, in more than any other. So, what is your view on all that?
Well, I agree. I mean, it sort of feels like 1988. I mean, probably, obviously a smaller scale because Reagan, it was like almost a complete wipeout, or 1980 rather. It's also, we need to keep in mind, conservatives need to keep in mind that in 1928, Herbert Hoover swept almost the entire country, and then 4 years later, okay, why is this doing this? I'll be back in a second. What I'm saying is that Herbert Hoover swept the country.
That's great. There you go. Lights are back on.
There we go.
Oops, got again.
Herbert Hoover swept the country in 28, and then in 32, we had FDR obliterate Hoover. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with the Great Depression, obviously, but a lot can change in 4 years. So we need to keep that in mind. And I actually got a comment on my Twitter or X page that conservatives need to stop gloating and beating their chest about this and rubbing it in, because what that's going to do, just like they've been doing to us for the last 4 years and for pretty much the last 30 years, if you really think about it, other than 2016 and 2004, they've been gloating about their wins, and we finally had enough and we fought back. But as Linnea said, it's going to take keeping that momentum, and the fight's not over. It's really only just begun. We got the victory. We've won the battle, but we haven't lost the war. And so, using winter. Okay, that's a funny comment. Anyway, back to what I was saying is that we may have won the battle, we haven't lost the war. We have a big war ahead of us. It's going to take a lot of eliminating useless, cutting deficit spending down. Trump did not do that in his first term. I'm hoping that he's going to do that this time. I'm optimistic with Elon Musk and looking into this and Vivek, but that remains to be seen. Obviously, he hasn't taken office yet, so I'm optimistic. But we need to keep that in mind. We need to eliminate bureaucracy. There's a lot of the problems we have are the bureaucracy, and also, as I was trying to mention earlier with my audio, we have a war to win on not only with the presidential front, which we have, but also in Congress. And we have the Republicans have the majority in the Senate and the House, but there's not a whole lot of hardcore principled conservatives out there that are in our government. And so a lot of voters, a lot of conservatives are complaining about the Senate majority leader. A lot of this it rests on the fault. The fault rests on not the politicians in office, but the people who are voting for them in the primaries. A lot of voters on both sides of the aisle are lazy, and they'll vote. Democrats will vote for whoever they see. They see name familiarity. They're going to vote for whoever they see on CNN or MSNBC. It's a popularity contest in the primaries, and you're going to see conservatives vote for whoever they see on Fox News getting airtime. They're not going to take the time to do research into the candidates to see where they stand on particular issues. They just see an R or a D next to their name and they vote them in. Draining the swamp in Congress starts with the voters being informed, and a lot of conservative voters, I hate to say it, are not informed when it comes to what's going on at the Senate and the House of Representatives on that level in Congress. And then you also have local elections, your mayor, your city council, county board of supervisors, district attorneys, judges, sheriffs. All of those have much more influence on your day-to-day life than anything in Congress, and especially the presidency. And so people need to get involved in local elections. Taking our country back and getting on course of our founding fathers more or less wanted, which is what conservatives want. It starts from the bottom up, not from the top down, in my opinion. And we have we have momentum right now. We need to keep it going. We cannot fumble the ball this early. We got to keep it going into the midterms, into 2028, and hopefully Trump's cabinet picks are good. Hopefully we get they're able to get stuff done in this administration, especially before the midterms, while Republicans have control. I'm optimistic, but I'm hoping that we can keep this momentum going, because that's what we need. Because again, it's a long drawn out war. We've only just won a battle.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I mean, I think the left controls so much of our institutions. They've spent decades infiltrating academia, Hollywood, media, everywhere, that they convinced themselves that they had won, that they actually do run everything, and now they're going to exert their power. They're going to try to convince the public things that aren't true, that there are 57 different genders, that a boy playing a girl's sport is actually a boy if he says so. They thought that they could recreate reality into their own image. And the world in America said, you can't. You've abused our tolerance, you've abused our trust of you as an institution, and we see you now. And I think that's where I think this feeling will last a long time, because not, as you were warning, Chris, not to overplay your hand, not to spike the football in their face over and over again, but to keep your head down and do the real hard work that is necessary to save the country in the way it needs to be saved. What's going to help with that is the fact that the left, I think, still doesn't realize what has happened. They don't realize that the world of their imagination is not the world of reality, and it's going to take them a while to get their feet under them. So full steam ahead for normalcy, conservatism, common sense, and hopefully a sunny economic world in the future. So I want to thank everyone for being on this kind of special free-form edition of the In the Tank podcast. I want to thank Linnea Lucan for being on the show. Tune in tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, where I will be hosting her and two other climate experts on the Climate Realism Show. Thank you, Chris Martz, for being on the show from Pennsylvania.
Thanks for inviting me.
On your ex-audience. We really appreciate it. We will have you on again. That's all for now, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye. As soon as I find the outro button. There it is.